Chapter 26. Clara. Clara plummeted toward the courtyard at dizzying speed. Shiva and Hawthorne covered their eyes. Surely she was done for. "Come on," Philip whispered urgently under his breath. The counterweight whipped around the banner pole, once, twice, 3 times, spinning faster and faster as the rope grew shorter and shorter. The coils began to slide around the banner pole, the rope straining between the opposing weights of Clara and the heavy chandelier piece. And then, just as Clara predicted, it happened. The laws of physics became apparent. The friction of the rope slowed Clara's descent. She dropped 100 feet, then 50, then 20, all the while losing speed until, finally, she stopped. Her feet just touching the ground. The entire ordeal lasted only a matter of seconds. But for Clara and the others, it was enough excitement for a lifetime. It worked! Shiver and Hawthorne bounced up and down, hugging one another. Philip breathed a sigh of relief. "Clever indeed," he whispered. Clara untied the rope from her waist and waved to Philip. Now it was his turn. He quickly took hold of the rope and began rappelling down the side of the tower. Clara watched impressed. "Did you learn that in soldier training?" she quipped when he reached the ground beside her. Philip winked. "We can't all take the easy way down. Come, we must hurry." The friends stealthily made their way through the palace grounds, keeping out of sight and searching for a way to get in. But all the entrances to the castle were securely guarded by Sugarplum's evil tin soldiers. "There's no way in," Clara whispered. Suddenly, a squeak caught their attention. A mouse was perched on a ledge just behind Philip's shoulder. Philip recoiled. "Back away," he warned Clara. "Mice! Wait, I think it's okay." Clara looked more closely at the furry creature. It wasn't just any mouse. It was the one she had first encountered when she'd entered the realms. The one with an angry scar running across its eye. "It's Mouse Rings," Clara exclaimed. Taking a chance, she held out her hand. Mouse Rings sniffed it and his features softened. He scurried into her palm, and she gently stroked down his fur. Just like that, he looked like a cute little mouse. "I think he's here to help," Clara whispered to Philip. "Aren't you, Mouse Rings?" The tiny mouse gave another squeak and hopped down from her hand. He ran over to an ornate hatch cover in the middle of the cobblestone road. "He knows a way in," Philip said, realization dawning. Clara grinned. "Mice always do." The hatch led Clara and Philip down a long ladder deep into a shaft, which seemed to have no bottom. They climbed down and down, finally reaching a long tunnel. The sound of rushing water echoed from its depths. Mouse Rings scurried ahead and out of sight. "This way," Clara said, leading Philip onward. Together they trekked down the shadowy corridor before coming upon an old rusting gate. They opened it, and were met by a heart-stopping sight, a perilous rocky ledge overlooking the raging river that surrounded the palace. Clara and Philip peered down and gulped. The drop was treacherous, the rock wall slick and crumbling. Not far away, a waterfall thundered, spinning the massive wheels that powered the palace. "And the engine room," Clara realized. That must be what Mouse Rings wanted them to find. If she could get to the water wheels, that was her way in. It had to be. Meanwhile, far above them, the bridge leading to the fourth realm was in sight. Philip and Clara watched Sugarplum's tin soldiers marching across, battling Mother Ginger's mice and Polychinelles. The soldiers were strong, and there were too many. They were winning. If Clara and Philip didn't hurry, there wouldn't be a fourth realm to save. "You have to go back," Clara urged Philip. "You have to stop Sugarplum's army." "How?" Philip asked. "Find a way, Philip," Clara insisted. "You can do it. I believe in you." Gratitude mingled with worry crossed Philip's face as Clara stepped out onto the treacherous rock ledge. "What about you?" he asked in concern. "I've got what I need." Clara gripped the rock wall, steadfast. "This is for me. Go." Philip gave her a last look. "Good luck," he said. Then he was gone, racing back down the tunnel, and Clara was on her own. She looked to her destination and continued along the perilous crags. Several times her feet slipped, but she managed to hang on. Her hands sorely scraped from the jagged stone. Farther and farther she climbed, her arms and shoulders aching with the strain. Suddenly, she felt a cracking beneath her feet. She jumped ahead, clinging tightly to the wall as a large chunk of ledge broke away from where she had just been standing. There was no ledge any longer, and no going back. Very slowly, she inched her way closer to the pounding water wheel. Good hand and footholds were becoming harder to find. She dug her fingernails in, the rocks slick with water spray. Holding tightly with one hand, she felt around with the other, trying to locate a secure grip. Hey! Her hand slid into a deep crack, and a flock of birds flew out. Startled, she yelled, her voice lost against the roaring water. Her grip slipped, and she swung outward by her remaining hand, feet dangling free over the roaring chasm below. The birds flew upward, and Clara swung back into balance. Miraculously, finding the handhold again, she hugged the rock wall, breathing hard. Everything you need is inside, she repeated to herself over and over. Everything you need is inside. The paddles of the water wheel were in front of her now. Curtains of water poured down. Shakily, she looked up to scan the wheel's encasement. There had to be an entrance into the palace's engine room somewhere. There had to be. There, Clara cried. At the pinnacle of the water wheel was an opening. That was it, the way into the engine room. Only there was no rock wall to climb to reach it. The only way up was... Clara watched the fast-moving water wheel paddles fly past. You've got to be kidding me, she murmured. Her heart raced, but she stayed strong. I can do this, she said. The paddles whipped past. One wrong move, any wrong move, and she'd be sent spiraling to the bottom of the chasm. On 3, she whispered to herself. 1, 2, 3! She lurched forward, just barely grabbing the lip of the whizzing paddle. It soared upward, carrying her along with it. Her hair whipped back, her stomach churned, and then, somehow, miraculously, thump! Clara flew through the opening into the engine room, landing on the cold stone floor. She lay there for a long moment, bedraggled, breathless, exhausted. But she had made it. She swallowed hard and sat up. Every muscle in her body screamed in protest. But she ignored the pain. Time to get to work, she said. Precious moments ticked away. Clara worked furiously on the engine's control panel. Her tools were spread out on the floor, having helped her complete the first part of her plan. She'd run a long length of wire around the room, close to the ground, and connected to a pin, which held the rope of the engine room's heavy chandelier. That had been the easy bit. Now was the hard part, reimagining the operation of the engine itself. Clara nimbly sorted through the tangle of wires, trying to make sense of her mother's handiwork. How do I change it, Mother? She whispered under her breath. How do I reverse the mechanism? She followed one of the thin wires back to where it connected to a magnetic block, just like the magnet that had powered Drosselmeyer's mechanical model of swans upon a lake, but on a much larger scale. Aha, she whispered. She took Shiva's pin, which had been clamped between her teeth, and used it to unfasten the screw that attached the wire to the block. She found the opposite wire and studied them in her fingertips. I hope this works, she whispered to herself. Suddenly, a massive noise rattled her, but it hadn't come from inside the palace. It had come from outside the opening through which she'd entered, out on the water. It sounded as though something huge had collapsed. She ran to the crevice leading to the wheel and peered out through the rushing currents of water. She gasped. Through the spray, she witnessed the bridge to the fourth realm collapsing, Sugar Plum's tin soldier army falling along with it. Philip's done it, Clara realized with a thrill of pride. He stopped the army! She clapped her hands in delight, but then a terrible thought struck her. Which means Sugar Plum will be coming to make more soldiers. Her heart pounded. I don't have much time. She bolted back to the control panel and tinkered feverishly. One wire here, another there. Crisscrossed and redirected and screwed back into place. She had just secured the final bit when, clunk, the door to the engine room burst open, and a figure loomed in the doorway.